Hi, thank you, everyone, and welcome to all of you to today's Third Friday training. This is one of a series of trainings that we do here out of the Big Bend of Florida at the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center in cooperation and with the Big Bend Coalition Against Human Trafficking. That's our local anti trafficking coalition. And for several years now, we've had the great pleasure of doing what pre COVID was in person trainings every third Friday. Okay, to start our presentation today, I'd like to bring attention to the fact that today is Juneteenth. And as many of you probably know, that 157 years ago today, it marked the end of slavery in Texas. The prior end had happened, the official end with the Emancipation Proclamation. It happened New Year's Day, 2 years prior, but it took in those days that long for the information to get to the last Confederate stronghold, which was Texas at the time. We mark today as a day of celebration of the end of slavery, officially, legally in our country. But we know that the legacy of slavery goes on. And we certainly know that when it comes to today, we still see the exploitation and enslavement of people in our country and around the world. So today, I'm really happy to help celebrate and to help lead a conversation to contemplate the impact of human trafficking in the state of Florida and also in our country, in our nation. It's a time for us to decide where we want to go from here, and we'll also mark today as one where we are extremely lucky to have a presentation, as you can see on our slides right now, from the Florida Department of Education and Valerie Ellery, who is with Title IV Part A of the DOE. I'd like to introduce Valerie Ellery. She is the Human Trafficking Prevention Education Specialist at the Florida Department of Education's Title IV Part A team. She joined in October 2019, but I swear, Valerie, it's great to be working with you because I know you have this issue down for having joined so relatively recently to the human trafficking team. And by saying that too, I also want to give a shout out to Michelle Gaines. I know you're probably listening, Michelle, just to say to you, thank you for your years of work on this issue within DOE and in our community, in our state, and our world. You are just marvelous. And in fact, Michelle did one of the presentations on the Third Friday training, I think several years ago. Valerie has dedicated over 30 years to the work in the field of education in many different roles. She was a certified curriculum teacher, curriculum specialist, international educational consulting, and best-selling author. Books include her work on literacy, self-worth, and has been inspiring and motivating teachers and others for many different years and all across the globe. Now she's working to help Florida schools get in line with the terrific, I might editorially add, important, terrific rule that the DOE adopted and became effective last December here in Florida. And again, know that that rule and other information is on STAC's website, which you can grab later. But without any further ado, I want to introduce Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. You know, when we look at these faces here on this opening slide, we see faces of our next generation. Yet we know there's a raging war out there, and it is hidden in plain sight. It's tearing at the social fabric of every community, nation. I've actually been working with 11 different countries in human trafficking since 2012. And working this field, we know that it's out there. And yes, it is, even in our schools. So I do want to take a moment and thank Robin and the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center and her whole team for hosting this webinar. I thank Ron and the USF team, just as Robin said, for being our tech support and just being alongside on this journey with child welfare and all the different roles. And I do want to thank every one of you. And I believe we have over 200 or so already joining us. And I just want to say thank you because you are on the front line. Depending on if you just enlisted in this army against this war, or maybe you've been doing this for a long time, and maybe you're in child welfare, maybe you're in law enforcement, maybe you are an educator, and I know we have some superintendents on this call as well. So whatever role you find yourself in, let's lock arms and arm in arm join forces, almost like we are an armed force for against this enemy. So as we have that thought in mind, let's go in and look at today's roadmap. We are going to go on a journey, and we're going to take a first stop at knowing who and what our enemy is at this time. And so human trafficking and child trafficking overview. You'll see our second stop does go in and really address the history of the rule that Robin was talking about and why we're even here. And yes, Michelle Gaines is going to be a champion on that when we start to begin to talk about that, because without her leading the way as we are all on the front line, then we wouldn't be here today, because I know she was a driving force for that. So we'll talk about that again. And then our third stop on this journey over the next hour is to really look at what we're doing with Title IV Part A right now. And we're looking at a child trafficking curriculum guide, K-12, across the curriculum, that we're going to be rolling out. And so you're going to get a glimpse of that today. And we're going to be hoping to have that ready and available in the fall for schools. And then on a short little stop, we're going to have a moment to really think about what is awareness, what is prevention, and how does it fit into what we are doing. Each one of you have a role in education or in child trafficking or in human trafficking. And so where does the line go? What is awareness? What is prevention? So we're going to take a brief moment and talk about that today. And then we're going to end with partnership and action. I think we actually begin with partnership because we are all hand in hand on this journey, but we're going to end with taking some action. So hopefully you signed up for this journey. And so here we go. You know, with any army, we want to be equipped, we want to be empowered, and we want to know where the enemy is. So this image that you're seeing is from Polaris's website, and you can go on there. This was the 2018 the updated one at that time, and it just shows the hot spots. And as you can see, and many of you are on this call from Florida, but I did see we have some from Michigan and other states, but you can see where your location is and know we have a problem. And so when we start to look at what is Florida's problem, since today is going to focus on Florida and our Florida schools and just what each one of us, depending on what role we play in the community, can do to help this problem, we want to look at some statistics. You'll see on the left-hand corner that we literally, this is a breakdown of those trafficking reports that have come in through Polaris, and the 9 to 17-year-olds, 35% of Florida statistics. And if you include the 18 to 20, just to say our next generation from 9-year-old to 20-year-olds, they're over 50% of our population that's inside the trafficking that have been a victim are our next gen. So we know we've got to tackle this problem. We need to begin to join forces together. And if you look at even the breakdown of females and males and transgender, you know, we've got some statistics here in Florida. So we have 29% of labor and 70% of sex trafficking. So again, we have a problem. When we looked at the state, we are third in the nation, again, behind California and Texas. And so we sit here saying, wow, what can we do about this? So the very first thing I want you to do in your chat section of the comment section, think about your role, how you're coming into dealing with, maybe you've been in this field for years. I've started in 2012 and working in the field of human trafficking and working in with an organization called A21. But think about in the chat, if you will write what you know about human trafficking, because in order to tackle this and fight for freedom, we got to know what we're fighting, and we got to know how we're bringing our part to the table. So we have I always love the ripple effect. We have a stone, and it's in my hand right here. That's what that looks like there, is like a little stone. And when I toss it into this vast ocean, am I making a difference? So start putting your comments in the chat for just a second. We'll give you about 10, 15 seconds to begin to write. What does human trafficking mean to you? Why are you on this call? A sleeping giant. Wow, Mary. Yes. Yes.
And someone's talked about prevention too, and really individuals about keeping their own kids safe.
Keeping your own kids. And, I have 4 adult children. While people are writing, I'll just share. I have one of my granddaughters out of one of my oldest son, who is this week just turning 37 and finishing off this year 20 years in the Navy. He's a biomedical engineer, and she is 12. So I'm in this because I know the power of what we can do as educators on the front line. I know the power that our children need us to stand up and say enough is enough. So thank you for these comments. Yes, yes, yes.
Exploitation, that it's a silent killer. Yeah, look at all these great comments. We have a special agent from HSI on with us, noting that making a difference is important, getting more knowledge. It looks like we've got across the board, someone correctly noted, and I don't know if you're a lawyer, but I will say as well as to perhaps a fellow attorney that it is a human rights violation.
Yes, it is. We're going to talk about that today. Thank you for noting that in advance. Absolutely. So as you're still making some comments, of course, this is the definition that we have on our Florida DOE website to define human trafficking. And maybe some of you put some of these in the comment. Maybe you put that it's soliciting, that's it's harboring, it's transporting. Maybe you put force, fraud, or coercion, some of the technical terms that we know to be inside the definition of trafficking. Yet we know that today we're talking about child trafficking. We're talking about that. Over 50% of our population of the victims are in the child trafficking realm, just about. And so, what's the difference here? Child trafficking is definitely human trafficking, but what's the difference? Look down here. It says, regardless of whether there's force, fraud, or coercion, it's child trafficking. And so it's important that as child welfare workers, as teachers, as educators, as principals, as superintendents, anybody that's on this call today, that we realize that it doesn't always have to come with that force and fraud in order for us to begin to look at trafficking with our children. So it is a crime against contradiction. This is a slide that A21 puts out, and A21 stands for abolishing injustice in the 21st century. And so I'm all about that. And on the left-hand side, it says millions of slaves, yet only 1 to 2% are rescued. So every time you look on the left, when you look at those billions in profits, you contradict it with the concept, yet only millions are in global response to such a billion-dollar industry. Yet, in this case, on the crime section, it's illegal, but only 0.001% are convicted. You can see this contradiction, this tug of war that's happening. It's unseen. Yes, we talked about it, a little bit of unseen, but I believe it's happening in plain sight, and we are opening our eyes, and we are going to see this villain, if you will. Yet it's happening everywhere, even in your own hometown. It could be happening. High profit, low risk. That's what the perpetrators feel. So, what can we do in this case? I say let's take a quick poll, because here's a statement I'd like you to see and then think about. Do you agree that education is the key to prevention, where awareness meets action? Think about that statement. If you agree, why? Give a supporting reason to that argument in this case. You know, Governor DeSantis has really put out there in the schools to say, let's get back in the understanding of how to handle a debate and how to do it in a fair way, in a just way. And so even here, we want to give you an opportunity. I saw in some of the polling, or the agree or disagree, some of you were like kind of, well, somewhat. Some of you were, no, I don't agree with that. And I know we've heard from a lot of parents in the education field right now, even saying, I don't know if child trafficking prevention, education, awareness should be in the schools. I don't know if that's the place. So they would disagree. We have some parents that may say that's not the place. But again, that's one of the concepts you could think of it when you see the statement. We use this anticipatory statement guide as a tool when we go into the classrooms. So in our curriculum guides that we're creating right now, we're dropping a few of them in there to help stir up the conversation. Say a statement such as, modern day slavery is human trafficking. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? That might be another one that we could put out there to the students to have them continue to have conversation, to research, to think about. So I'm going to continue on and thinking I agree with that statement, because I do believe what Nelson Mandela said, that education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. And again, I believe this is the only weapon that's allowed in schools right now. So we need to get in there and take a hold of what's happening. And education is one of those key components that can do this. So, what does it look like in the schools? And we're going to ready to see a video in just a moment of a 4-minute video of just an opportunity that we could get a glimpse of something that could be happening in the schools. We're not saying this is exact, we're just giving you a little vignette. That is a video that's put out by a21.org. You can go on their website and they have um, all the different types of trafficking. They have videos, they have them in Spanish, they have them in different languages, and they are free for you to be able to use. They just ask you to go on to their website and go to their campaign and be able to take a hold of this and send it out there. So I just want to thank them for letting us to use that in today's webinar as well. So thinking about what you saw, and I saw many of you already capturing some of these indicators. Appears to be a minor, just working through some of the lists. The tattoo, sometimes they're there, sometimes it's not there. So this is not an exhaustive list. It just kind of gives us a little insight of what's going on and how we need to be having our eyes opened, even in our schools, of what's happening. Yeah, the branding, I'm kind of still scrolling through some of your chats, but this is one way of looking at indicators. I also want to highlight ACF, in this case, the Children and Families. They have a PDF that has red flags: physical, behavioral, environmental. And we have put this particular handout as one of the handouts. And just go to their website. There are tons of resources. So I do want to thank them for all their hard work and what they're doing to get resources out there for us to continue to know, because we can't fight an enemy if we don't know what it looks like or where it is. So one of the things also that I do know is in Florida, now that I know there's other states that are on this call, but in Florida, it is mandatory that if you're in the school system or if you're out there in the community, if you are in, well, law enforcement would already be doing this, but it is mandatory to report if you see child abuse or sexual abuse happening in this case. And so there's a hotline number, 1-800-96-ABUSE. And so that is one of the protocols that every school needs to make sure that we have in our classrooms and in our school system, is to know that we need to report anything that we're starting to see and understand. See something, say something is what we say. And so looking at this, you go, wait, I thought you said that Florida was number 3. Well, we are number 3 in the problem, but Florida has decided to do something and be number 1 in the solution. If we've got a problem out there, our Florida leaders are tackling it and saying, let's lead the way. And so what did they do? They went and created a rule. And we are in Florida the first ever state to have a mandate, K-12, to have all classrooms, have all students be exposed to this child trafficking prevention education. The intent, as you can see here on the screen, is that every school, that every school in Florida be a child trafficking free zone. Say that a couple times: child trafficking free zone. That is our goal. So how do we get there? As you see down in the bottom corner, it's the second stop on our journey today, is to look at the history. And so where did this history get started? That's a pretty good mandate. And I know that wasn't approved in the state legislation. I know that it was kind of turned down a couple of times. And it's been a battle in a lot of states to be able to get our schools equipped and empowered. And so who are our champions out there? Who's on the battlefield? Who's on the front line? You're looking at them right here on this slide. I couldn't wait to put the slide up and show you. It is my honor to have been working for Michelle Gaines. The ripple effect that I talked about earlier, where we just put just a little something out there and then know that that leadership and that ability of what we have in our voice can make a difference in the world. That is what's key. Michelle started with the Healthy Schools Department in I believe it was 2012. And in 2013, she decided to take on the human trafficking as a lead front runner in the education system in our department. And so she went on, and 2019, she was battling it from 2013 to 2019. And if you know Michelle, she is a champion out there. But in that time, she created the End Trafficking Schools flip book that we'll talk about at the end if you want information about this. But she created just so many tools, and one of them was posters. And she put them up all over the bureau, all over the Department of Ed in Tallahassee, all over in front of the elevator on January National Awareness Month for Human Trafficking. And yes, Chancellor Jacob Olivia noticed one, stood next to her at the elevator, looked at that and said, "Is this really a problem out there?" And that was the turning point over a year or so ago. The turning point that Michelle began to give tutorials to Chancellor and be able to start to say, yes, it is. Here's what we're doing about it. Well, he's like, well, what are schools doing about it? And so they decided to champion, Chancellor Jacob decided to go to our commissioner and say, hey, do you know about this problem? And many of you said you have children. Our commissioner has 6. And he said, is this really happening? Have we done something about this? Can we do something about this? And he was the leader that took the pebble and dropped it. And I want to say that he's the former Speaker of Florida House of Representatives, and so he knew a little bit about some of the laws that are out there and some of the opportunities that he could have. And he was a change maker, and he's a rule maker, so he was able to put this rule in place. And I just couldn't wait to give you a little bit of that human agency that's behind what you're getting ready to see. So on August 1st, 2019, they decided let's just go with the commissioner and go with the Department of Ed stance on this, and let's go around if we have to the legislation piece, and let's get this in our schools. Let's get a rule approved. So a notice went out, and in September it was passed, and you see October 1st the rule went in effect. And on October 1st, my position was created through Title IV Part A. So I came on board October 1st to have this rule happening, which I was super excited about. But by December, from October to December, and if you're on this call with us and you're one of those districts that went in there and started working on your implementation plan, we thank you, because you all just took it and ran with it. I know it was a struggle, and we just thank you guys for going through the battle with us. But all the plans are due. The annual report the plans have come in, but the annual report is due coming soon. So we're going to be able to go in and support schools, look at schools, see what's happening. What are the guidelines for these rules that these districts had to kind of go about and start to put into play? That it would happen annually, that it would happen K-12, that they'd use health education standards, that it would be developmentally kind of a scope and sequence across the grade levels, and it would be age appropriate. And so we're starting to say, what does that look like? What are some of the topics that need to happen inside this rule, you might ask? Well, there's 5 of them that are actually, they're all A's for some reason. Not sure why. It's supposed to be different, but it came up as all A's. But recognition of signs, resources, substance abuse, alcohol, and all of that with addictions, as you can see here, to reduce the risk. So they needed to have something in place for healthy boundaries, social emotional learning, understanding, safety seeking, how to get help, how to have disclosure involved, social media devices. And so with these topics, their plans, all schools needed to look at methods. And so why do other roles, I see so many different other roles on this call today, and you might even be tuning out saying, this doesn't affect me, this is just education. Well, we want to hopefully help on the solution side, so we want your input, we need your input. So please, if something of what you're seeing today just really resonates, contact us. We are looking for forces. I know Catherine is on this call, and she's with DDJ, and so we're looking to work with different agencies so that we can make sure that we touch all in this case. So you see the qualifications and the materials. And where do you find these? If you're on this call and you want to go look at some of the implementation plans or go see what your district is, if you're in Florida, you can go on our website and go to Healthy Schools, and there's a link that takes you right to the education rule, and then just click on the districts and find your plans. And we also have substance abuse plans and mental health. So there's 3 rules that are happening. Again, it's by July, we'll have some data to begin to see what's going on this year in year 1 as we go through this. Okay, we're going to move on to pit stop number 3 on this journey as we get equipped. And that is the plan that I'm working on currently through the summer, and I've been working on it all through this COVID-19, is a curriculum guide. And I thank those that are on this call today that have already been part of our think tank team. And if you want to be part of that think tank team, I know some of you have asked and I just haven't had a chance to reach out to you, but we would certainly love, it's not too late. But we are putting together a curriculum guide that is grade level specific, K-12. And so it's standards based, it's spiraled, as you can see here. It has opportunities for exemplar snapshots where educators and anybody could go in and say, okay, if we're talking about a certain thread like human rights, how are we presenting it in the schools? What's an exemplar snapshot? And what is a way that we can get this in our schools? So as you see here on the left-hand side, these are two threads that are in every single grade. So kindergarten, we have a thread for human rights all the way to 12th grade. And when we are writing these exemplar snapshots right now, we're looking through the lens of prevention for that particular area. And then identity and understanding identity. And then over on the other side, we also have relationships and digital safety. And with digital safety and relationships, we're looking through the lens as we write them right now as prevention tools. And I'll explain that in just a minute, but want to give you the concept of the four threads that we are spiraling, developmentally appropriate and age appropriate, with vocabulary and understanding aligned to the standards so that in the fall we can roll these out to our districts. And so what do we talk about? Let me have this little pit stop I said about awareness and prevention. Take a minute in the chat and maybe think about, are you in your role doing more work in the awareness section of human trafficking or more in the prevention or a little of both? And maybe you can elaborate on that if you want.
Both, yes, yes, all. So
Good,
there
good.
you go.
And
Okay.
I think we do want to look at it. And so many times some organizations, and that's okay if they're just awareness and doing campaigns and so forth. But we want to make sure, especially in the schools, that it's instructional methods and it's methods that bring prevention. It's methods that move. It's methods that we can drop that pebble and the ripple goes and it begins to happen. So in the awareness threads, we're looking at increasing students' knowledge because that's what awareness is. It's just to open the mind and get in there. And we're doing that in the human rights and identity. With prevention threads in every grade on healthy relationships and boundaries, we're trying to empower them a little more and equipping them with strategies and action. But all threads, every single one of them, we do end every one with a collaboration of action. So even if it's prevention, we're getting them to do something of action. And so I just want to just break down for just a moment what these threads look like. Under human rights, you can see here we've got a little definition that kind of goes with what we're meaning when we say human rights in this category of trafficking. And then the topics that you see at the bottom, individual rights, Bill of Rights, even dating rights, because in 11th grade, we just finished writing one that was all about teen dating violence. And yet that was in relationship thread, but in under human right thread, we actually put in there all about creating Bill of Rights for dating and helping the kids understand their role and in the identity. So that just gives you some quick little topics of what we're doing in each of these threads. When we talk identity and literally whatever role you play out there in the community, you are talking these threads. You are looking at these threads because we need to look at that social fabric of the student, the human agent, and what's going on with these victims and the survivors. We're getting survivor input. You know, when I talked about the think tank team, we have in North Carolina a survivor, a social worker, a psychologist. We have teams in Michigan, thank you guys, for the guidance counselor and teachers. We have globally, I've mentioned 11 countries I'm working with to get feedback on understanding of what's happening, social emotional learning. So we are looking at this from the gamut of an array of ways to get into the minds and help our students be equipped and empowered, as you see. Self-control. So in identity, we actually do the substance abuse because it helps them with their self-control when we focus on that. So we do put some of those topics in there as well. Relationship, here's just an understanding of what we say when we mean we're relationship bound, is to help them discern healthy and unhealthy relationship boundaries. And how do we do that? We do that with empathy and respect. I mean, it's everything that we need right now in our, you know, with our world being so unrest. And just how can we build this into the capacity of our students, even with knowing to keep them avoid from becoming victims of trafficking. communication skills. We have debates, we have different things happening inside these exemplar snapshots that give teachers and anybody, facilitators. And if you want to take this and run with it and take it into boys and girls clubs and different other places, we'd be happy to have you modify and pull it into your role of what you're doing. Digital safety, that is huge right now, with everybody COVID-19 and everybody's online and everything happening. That online enticement is happening, the grooming process is happening. And so we're writing lessons right now. And I think Kayla, who's on this call, she is trying really hard to dig up all the research that's out there on understanding dating apps, if they are. Imagine that. I'm so glad they didn't have dating apps when my grown children now were with me, because I'd be monitoring all of the dating apps. But what this looks like, let me give you a little understanding. The structural overview, every grade level will have these threads, big ideas, key vocabulary, as you see here, standards, essential questions and objectives. I'm not going to read all that's on the screen, but I have combined on this particular slide 9th and 10th grade, and some of them have shifted in different grade levels as we keep studying and understanding where cyberbullying fits in. It goes into 4th grade, so we've shifted them around. So when this comes out in the fall, our plan is to give you, anybody that needs this, a guide that is age appropriate. So the exemplar snapshot that we're going to just kind of take a peek at is called Photo Fate. And in this case, we're going to go back into a Can You See Me video, and it's online exploitation. And so it is based on a true story. This gives us a chance to see a glimpse in schools of what online exploitation might look like as well. It almost takes your breath away when we do that. What I do know about that particular story, because I was on some of the team when they were looking at some of this digital safety understanding, was that story, when I said was based on a true story, the ending was not as it showed right there at the end. That particular boy that the story was based on did commit suicide. And so um, the cases, and I saw some of what you guys were writing in the comments and the chats, and when do we start holding children on children exploitation accountable, and all that's going on. That's what we pray, that this child, this curriculum guide is going to give an opportunity for us to start having some conversation, start empowering, start helping them understand about the laws and all that's out there. But in this case, I had asked you guys to think about what are the indications and what were we seeing, what's going on. They're very clear and very easy to see in this case. Some are and some are not. Problems of sleeping and eating we might not have seen. And I do want to take a moment and let you know that even on the ACF website, they have the ACE, the adverse childhood experiences in understanding and kind of getting in there and taking this trauma background. Yes, I saw some questions where are survivors a part of helping us understand this? Yes, we have. When I mentioned the team in North Carolina, there's a survivor team, because there's a location there. There's a location here in Florida that I'm connecting with that has survivors. There's survivors in, like I said, in 11 countries that we're tapping into, those that we're helping with them to be able to become more of, not in this case the victim, but the survivor. And so we're going in and getting informed so that we can tweak and understand and have that sensitivity to know, as we write this, are we writing it from that voice that needs to be heard. So thank you guys for some of those comments in there. Yes, sextortion and sexting and solicitation, those are some of the topics that we have in our high school curriculum guides that we're starting to put out there, with a lot of understanding that this is sensitive topics. And so we are being very cautious how we're putting it there. But thank you guys for all of those comments that were right there in the comment chat. So we might put something where we have a display, we have ask, we have explain, we have kind of a format that we're writing, but we also have a collaboration stage at the end of each one of the threads per grade. And it's like this one that would go along with safety tips in this case, is assign groups to create a list. And so we would even say you could take this list. This is a generated list that we were working on just to have a example. But you could take each one of these. And if you're doing a presentation, I know a lot of facilitators are on this call trying to get ideas to how to go back out into the community and get this out there. We have put these statements like keep from posting or sharing personal information. We'll put it on a strip, cut them up, hand them out, and ask a group of students to read yours and determine as making a decision, is this something you should be thinking about before sending your text, during, or even after, and helping them just to even grapple with this conversation. But I just wanted to give you that idea. We're putting in various ideas like that. And so a little bit of our last stop, we've talked about the curriculum guide and the rule and the background behind it all, and a little bit about human trafficking and child trafficking. And we're going to end the last few minutes with looking at partnerships in action and begin to say, how are we all in this together? And how can we begin to think and solve this problem? Not just so that Florida can be number one leading the nation, but I saw that Michigan was on here. Like I said, I'm just kind of been trying to scroll, and I saw the question was a little bit on uh, what number Michigan might be. I'm not quite sure. I know New York is up there in the status too, but whether you're whatever state you're from, we need all of us. We need every sector.
Someone asked about this training, and two questions I think might be good for you to answer before we move on.
Okay.
What kind of permissions do you get when you do this training? Do parents have any say so in what their kids are going to see? And if you're going to cover that, that's great. And why don't you start with that?
Okay. Basically, we do want to hear from the parents, and we have been hearing from the parents. And the more we can communicate how we're showing these guides and what we're trying to do to help schools and district be age appropriate, that's going to be the key in working alongside of them. Right now, in the rule, it is a mandate, and so there's not a option to option out of it. And so, in that case, each district has decided and can decide what resources to use. So it's up to each district to go into their implementation plan and to begin to understand the extended partners and who they want to connect with. I do have a survey that we are getting sent out to all the districts, and it's a survey that districts can send, and we've already started to send it out to some of the extended partners that are out there to begin to help us understand what resources are there and help the districts to understand, is this a solid resource that is age appropriate, that does look at the standards? And so the question that the couple questions there I tried to answer into two is that parents in this case do not have that option of opting out for their child based on our mandate that's there.
And another question was about the sexting of the issue of sexting and sextortion. Is that covered? Do you think it will be covered in middle school curriculum? I know that we're talking K-12 when we talk about this awareness.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are talking K-12, and we are going all the way down to kindergarten and working our way up. And portions of it, we may not use a certain term in a certain grade, but we do know, I mean, based on what we're hearing and based on what we're researching, we're finding it, to be in the third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade already out there. So we're going to put some kind of caution inside each grade level, but also help them to be aware that this subject may already be happening in lower grades. And so we are creating an age appropriate, we believe, vocabulary list that spirals so that every grade level can see that. And if they are having to deal with a sexting issue happening in fourth grade, fifth grade, my granddaughter, I said, is sitting there in those middle school grades, and she's telling me everything. And it's just hard. It's hard to know that this is happening in our public schools in our lower grades. So yes, we are putting some of the understanding and bringing it down. The term prostitution has been brought up many times. Where do we land this? What do we do with this? And so I will say that we are doing everything to be as cautious and careful, and also to put the sensitivity and the opportunity for disclosure and understanding protocols, which we're getting ready to talk about next, we literally could have like 4 hours of all these kind of talks, and I'd love to come back if we needed to. But yeah, this is a hot topic right now, especially digital safety, and so I thank you guys for continuing this thought. Thinking about action steps, the first thing all of us need to do, hand in hand, coming across as we are armed forces, as I said earlier, but we need to know that what are those indicators. And so Polaris has put out a tools for educators. You can change this up and you can make some form of an action step for whatever field you're working in. And so with this, knowing what are some of the indicators. And then from that, I wanted to go into a newer format that I'm seeing more and more with this power and control type wheel. And they have customized them. And so you can find them out there. This is not in one of the handouts today, but I did want to say I was able to get it on Polaris's work. And so knowing the indicators and helping all of us to be equipped there, that's probably the first thing that needs to be in some of the protocols. So our educators need to be trained. We can't just hand them a curriculum guide and say go forth. We need to train them before they start educating our students. But first response, okay, so once you see something, it's saying let's say something. Just like when Chancellor Jacob Olivia saw that the poster, he had to say something, and when he said something, a ripple effect happened. And so I say that because when you see something, we need to do something. And so the number that's down at the bottom in the blue box is not in the handout, but I wanted to add it because it is definitely the number from ACF. And because our schools are required, if we see something in this abuse category or indicators, to call them as well. So once you figure out who you're going to call, you go to the left. If you have a protocol, implement your district protocol. If you're a superintendent on this call or somebody that's an administrator or a teacher and you don't know if your school district has a protocol, then you need to start creating a protocol. And we'd be happy to come alongside you and help you. We'll start creating some tools to help districts as well. But what you see here is a no on the right-hand side. My school's protocol, require me to follow a different course, or no, I'm looking for one, or I don't have one. And so it's important to create. But the first step, let me ask everybody, if you have your phone right now, maybe you're on this webinar on your phone. If you are, don't stop. But if you have your phone next to you, pick it up and go in and create a human trafficking number so that it's automatic, because when you see something you're going to go, where's that webinar, where's that folder, where's that, and instead of trying to find it, you can already have it directly. We put it directly in your phone. The number on the left again is the DCF national number, and Polaris is the one that is collecting our national human trafficking hotline number to get some of those stats that you saw earlier on who's calling in, and then they follow up and do investigations along with our law enforcement. I have been working with some of the different DCF employees, and amazing resources that we need as educators to tap into. So I encourage you in your protocol that you're creating for your schools, make sure you have somebody on one of the teams, whether a coalition that you partner up with. I've been to the West Palm one, and they're amazing out there. We have some great coalitions that are out there. Get connected and have them come and train up and help you as you continue to create your implementation plans. Maybe some of the first steps are to say, what are the state laws? Where are the laws, and how can I start understanding these? Mandatory reporting, we know in Florida it is mandatory, so maybe your staff needs to know that. Hopefully they do already. Who's the best position to be a point lead? We would love for every single school to have a point lead on this, not just a district person, but a school-based person, and then send them to our regional trainings when we start opening them back up. Let us help you help them help our students. So what is my school's relationship with local law agencies? Our school resource officers, they need to be praised and honored in so many ways. They're there for our educators to help them understand the human trafficking and what's going on. If you need more help in the protocol components, again, I'm turning to ACF. I'm your biggest cheerleader right now, to know that they have a protocol component handout that we attached here as well. Just want you to know there's a plethora of resources that are out there for you. How to do staff training. They have people that will come out. SOAR, I was just on a webinar this week with SOAR, with OTIPs, and just there's so many good resources. This one that I pulled is from the National Center of Safe, Supportive Learning Environments, and they have a sample protocol for school districts. So it's a little different. So, each school district, of course, can create their protocol alongside an ICA with school district leadership, federal and law enforcement, mental health, everything that I say right there in that paragraph, service providers, survivors. If you can get them on your team, they are incredible to have a part of your team. So these are just some of the items that we can do to make a difference. And so as I get ready to close, I want you to think about the ripple effect. Think about even Michelle Gaines being able to say in 2012, I got to do something about this. In 2012, I came about this because my neighbor, who used to play Barbies with one of my youngest daughters, who's now 25 and was in our high school. And when she was just a child, I felt like at my home playing Barbies with my daughter back in the day. Now she's grown in the high school, and she got hooked up with bickering and things that were going on in her world and with her family, and got connected with a lover boy, if you will, who pulled her away. And she went off into North Carolina and went off and did some things. And so I'm not going to share a lot of the sensitivity of that story, but my heart began to break. And my heart knew that as a parent, as a mother, as a grandmother, and now even as an educator for 30 something years, I had to do something. I couldn't sit quiet on my watch, on our watch. So I challenge each and every one of you, whatever role you play, think about what action are you taking to create your ripple effect. And throughout the rest of the day, start just identifying, what have you done today, or what have you done this month, what are you going to do this year to make a difference. We need you on this army, we need you in the front lines. And I thank you guys so much for having Florida with our Title IV Part A team, myself, and the Department of Ed, to be able to come alongside of Survive and Thrive advocacy with Robin and the department, and everything that you guys are doing with Florida USF. I just thank you guys. So I am going to kind of leave it to Robin to start asking questions that you might have seen. And I was trying to do the scroll, but multitasking is starting to get me on a Friday afternoon. So I'll be quiet for a moment.
Oh, Valerie, thank you so much. That was great. And it is a really exciting time in Florida to know that this information is going out to our schools, to our parents, and to everyone in our community. So thank you very much for all you do and for this terrific presentation. What I want to do is remind everybody this. We are seeing that all around us, certainly with COVID, certainly with people who we know are trafficked, that vulnerability is the number one thing that can characterize a victim and a survivor having been vulnerable. We are seeing people in our African American community dying at 4 times the rate of white people. We're seeing economic insecurity being really exploding in this time of COVID, when so many people, especially people with low wage, low skilled jobs, are losing their jobs. Businesses are closing. People are getting laid off. It's so important for everyone to realize that now, during this time of COVID-19, that human trafficking is very likely exploding, but we just haven't seen it yet, because we know that the vulnerabilities in our communities are, number one, being exposed. That's happening with COVID, and we're realizing the vast inequities all around us. And those who are most vulnerable because of these inequities are more vulnerable to being trafficked. Human trafficking doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? So we know that our communities, whether it's because of healthcare, access to jobs, access to wealth, education, anything, that we're going to see people who are in those situations that are on the are more disadvantaged, are more unable to come forward, are going to be more vulnerable. I also wanted to give a special shout out to anybody who does education around and with special needs children, or any forms of people with disabilities that we know from the cases that come forward that traffickers target persons with disabilities, both adults and children. Also to highlight, and both of your videos really focused so well on sex trafficking, that we also see kids being labor trafficked, and that probably there's more labor trafficking in our state, in our communities, We know that that's true globally, that labor trafficking is a huge reality. Again, we have seen that, people being forced maybe back into jobs that are unsafe, folks being exploited for their labor, especially during COVID. We know that this is, again, a really horrible reality. So, with that, let me ask you first to talk a little bit about that idea of, I know that schools had to close down early because of COVID. It meant that kids weren't being seen, right? So we know that calls into the hotline were way down. All of the mandatory reports that you talked about in your presentation, those mandatory reporters were not seeing kids, and they're more online. So that's out there. Anything else happening in terms of COVID and the schools and trafficking that you want to mention here?
Basically everything you just said.
Okay.
The numbers, we're not, because it's not being reported in that age bracket as much because they're staying home, sometimes with that familiar understanding of who's trafficking them. And so because that is happening, it's not being reported. So the numbers are not, it's not going to show what's truly going on. And I can say that the impact of COVID-19 on this, the trauma is definitely going to be needed as the education is going to be needed as we go back into the schools to help students in that healthy and unhealthy relationship understanding. So that thread of relationship and identity of who they are, their purpose, their worth, their strength, and giving them the ability to, to understand how to have a voice in the middle of it. Hopefully, if we don't ever get back into where they're in a lockdown mode again, but hopefully we can begin to equip them. But just during this COVID-19, we got a call from a person that was just devastated because one of their friends in school committed suicide at home during this. So some of the things that are happening as an adverse reaction to COVID-19 aren't being reported just yet, but I think we need to be ready. And we need to have our social workers, we need to have our guidance counselors, we need to have our teachers. We need to be thinking this social emotional understanding of what's going on, and be ready to be on that force for it.
I think as we go forward, we're going to have to keep innovating. How are we going to get that information? Because, like your slide that said, prevention awareness, gosh, prevention is so very important. And really, a lot of this awareness work is around prevention, right?
Oh, it is. It
So
is.
here's a question. Do you have educators that will be willing to come and educate communities and groups? I can tell you that the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center here in the Big Bend, we do this all the time. We are hopeful of getting our expertise around this issue so that we can do that training. But we know that it is highly specialized, and that you'll have some information about that, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of agencies that are out there that are helping NGOs. I think of Her Song in Duval County. There's a lot that are out there that would be able. And as far as in the education, our department, you're certainly welcome to call us and we can begin, when schools start to open up, to come out and support you and to do trainings for you, for your schools. And I know we're going to get a lot of calls when year two begins to roll around and the implementation plans are happening, and we're trying to help everybody to roll out. And I do want to clarify. I think you asked earlier, or somebody was asking about the curriculum when it might be available. I want to clarify that what we're working on is not so much a curriculum in its all as a resource. It is a guide, a curriculum guide, so that districts who have already been working with partners, already working with resources, already having some bits and pieces of different types of curriculum that are out there, they can monitor it, or they can certainly use this curriculum guide. And it will be set up that if this is all they used within their school districts, we believe it will be solid enough and strong enough to have that support that is needed at this time. Now, the rules can be mandated and changed and modified. And so, like in the mental health, they added 5 hours mandatory. Right now, child trafficking doesn't have a mandatory amount of time in the schools that it has to be. All it needs to be at this time is exposed out there with an instructional method plan in place for it. So that I'd love to just make sure I clarify that it's not a true all everything just sitting here as a curriculum. It is a guide. And
And that leaves local districts the opportunity to tailor it. If they have various whatever their population is, maybe they have a strong migrant farm worker population. Maybe they have a strong refugee population. There might be a way for the schools to make sure that they're tailoring the curriculum, to their needs, their local needs, right?
yes, absolutely. They can tailor it. They can, send questions to us when we have some of the time. I'd be happy to help any organization, agency to equip them and empower them. My background is curriculum, and that's what I did in Manatee County for years. I was overseeing different schools and helping write curriculum. And again, the background that I bring, I've been able to even work across the board with Major League Baseball, and we wrote a language and culture curriculum.
There you go. That's great. A question here: can anyone be part of the curriculum guide or the curriculum development? So locally, can people be involved in this, Valerie?
If yeah, if you are that person that you have been hearing this and you're like, gosh, I really would like to have some input or some thoughts. I do welcome you. I do welcome, people that are excited and passionate about this project. It's a tough project. Those that are on the team that might be on the call, they know it's a challenging one. But I can put together a Zoom call with a think tank team and throw out some ideas, and I've been doing that regularly every single week, and letting different agencies across the board give us feedback and give us input. We're working all summer to really edit these and trying to have them ready for fall. So it's a now or never type thing right now, to try to get these complete. But knowing that we will, as they roll out, I'm sure we'll continue to welcome all input.
And here's what I love too. Here's another person in the chat said school resource officers and guardians should see this. And I would say, gosh, I remember when Michelle said, I think she trained something like 5,000 bus drivers. I don't think there's anyone in your school, from the custodial staff to the cafeteria ladies to, anyone who should not get this training. I mean, it really should be a level, appropriate to their jobs, but everybody should know about this, because you know how we all talk to our cafeteria.
Yeah.
Ladies, I loved our folks that always were there for us, regardless of what they did in the school system. Everybody is there for students. So that's great to mention that. Someone did mention that in the chat of SROs, and that might mean that you and your local task force need to reach out also to your local law enforcement to make sure that, what are they doing? Does your local law enforcement have protocols around human trafficking? Do they have protocols around students? Are you part of your local Department of Children and Families regional approaches? Everyone has a task force in every region of the state, and we're very grateful to all of our the child welfare staff and experts and what they bring to the table. They're vital for this because they're working with children as well. Okay, any other questions? Yes, exactly. Wimberly says, I believe everyone that deals with children should be aware. You're absolutely right. I would challenge you to know that anybody who is existing in our world needs to know about trafficking. That's what my perspective is. I also put up here, and let me just mention this again, when you were showing the videos, Valerie, and we've seen this, that sometimes these videos might be triggering to people. They are powerful. And whether this is maybe it wasn't an issue around trafficking, maybe was an issue around you or someone close to you was is a survivor of child sexual abuse, that they can be very triggering. And we didn't do an announcement before, but I put it in the chat. Our victim advocate here with STAC is Graciela Marquina. She works with survivors. We do case management and assistance, direct assistance to survivors and victims of trafficking. But when you show these videos or anything like this, I really encourage you to make sure you have resources, staff, mental health staff, advocates available to help anyone who might be triggered.
Yes. And I would say even in today, today's webinar, it would have been great for me to say up front, because I know to be sensitive to even us adults, it could have triggered. So for that, if it did, I'm sorry for not putting that disclosure out there in advance to let you know. But they do, and we do need to be on guard and ready for opportunities for students to share and say. And they may go to the cafeteria, worker. They may go to their bus driver after seeing something like that. Somebody that they feel trusted in a trusted adult situation. It could be a peer, a trusted peer. So we just need to know to let everybody know when somebody comes forward with, hey, this has happened. And those videos actually have been used nationwide and globally, and have had opportunities for many to come forward. So
it's inevitable. It happens. Another question just came in about partnering with child advocacy centers. And we've got child advocacy centers all over the state to get this into the schools. And I know that they're also being trained. Thank you, Mary, for that.
yeah,
They work closely with school partners. So yeah, absolutely. What do you think?
absolutely. I think they need to be helping with the protocols in the schools as well. Absolutely. We're
I
all
think
in
that
this together.
that's a protocol piece. It would seem that every school, for example, I hope in Land County Schools and the other 5 areas that Stack serves, the other 5 counties, that we're listed, for example, as a resource for people. So all around the state, we do have local organizations doing this work. It might not be a single sort like we are one topic, this human trafficking that we do, but there's going to be expertise in local areas, and those people need to be available to the schools, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would hope that they would make themselves available, because they've been in the business, if you will, and I don't say that lightly, but they've been in the trenches. They understand where the education system is just coming on board. And so we may have the curriculum understanding and how to put, pieces together, but those that have been out there, we need to hear from you, and we do want you to be a part of the teams that are being created at each school and each district, and superintendents that are thinking through this process. How can you, begin to create an action plan for your district? Go to these agencies and let them be a voice for you, and let them help you create your protocols, because they're the best at it, and they're the ones you're going to want to come to. The law enforcement, everybody that we have listed in that one posting, is just, they are all, like I just keep saying, we're all in this together, and we need to link arms right now. And
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also, let me just ask you real quick. Someone had mentioned this. Now, I had a comment really earlier from the Diocese of Orlando that said they've been working on this with the schools very closely. So there's a local resource on the Orlando area as well. But what about private schools? Do they have to do this? Are private schools also covered and required to do this kind of awareness and education?
Um, it's of course we can't mandate private. Charter schools are a part of, needing to put it out there, but we have a FAQ that is on our website, that you can go to and be able to, it answers some of those questions, like the question of, should parents, are parents opting out or not opting out? Those kind of questions are already listed there.
I will tell you that every time I've gone to, all you have to do is put human trafficking in Florida Department of Education, and your website pops right up in that page. It's so very helpful.
Yeah, we're in the
So,
process of updating it even more. So yeah, we're trying to be the leader in the nation, as Florida is, to try to lead the way in this.
so everyone who wanted to know, this is the contact information. My very simple, my email is robin@surviveandthriveadvocacy.org, robin@surviveandthriveadvocacy.org. There's our website, and there's our phone number. You could also send us a text. Um, okay.
Yeah. And I just go into the email from Michelle, and I put it in there. That comment is from Michelle. As Valerie mentioned, I have attached the pricing. So I'll make sure that, I think you got that same email, but there's some information for our viewers.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all. Bye bye.